Infotainment Talk Radio, a podcast about vehicles. You love vehicles. We love vehicles. Let's talk. Infotainment Talk Radio with your hosts, Doug and Joel. Infotainment Talk Radio. Infotainment Talk Radio. That was great. We got a great brand new little bumper there. Welcome to Infotainment Talk Radio. I am Joel. Across the way from me over there is Doug. How you doing today, sir?
Good. How you doing?
Doing great, man. Excited to be able to do this episode. A lot of people don't think about all the computers that are involved in their vehicles, but there are a ton of them.
A bunch.
And we're going to cover that on this episode. Yes, computer love. Thank you. Over there. What was that? Turn that down. Zap and Roger. All right, there we go. On this edition, we are doing a whole bunch of talk about software and computers. And just so people know, firmware is an interchangeable word for software, but it's really specific to vehicles and
yes,
different machines and mechanisms. But Infotainment.com is a leader of plug-and-play factory upgrades, and this week we learn about your vehicle's computer brains and how and when to make sure that you get updates to those important computers and microprocessors. But I thought, it'd be cool to first start out. When was the first use of computers in vehicles?
It says here was 1968.
Jeez.
It's crazy to think.
Computers were like huge.
Yeah. It was probably the size of like a Volkswagen Bug or something.
Is that who did it?
Yeah, Volkswagen.
Okay, 1968 Volkswagen.
Electronic fuel injection system manufactured
cool.
by Bosch. And Bosch actually came a long way, man. Bosch does everything now, which is amazing.
Yeah, they do. Well, that's 30 almost 40 years ago.
Yep.
Now.
Absolutely.
That's
so
incredible.
Here we have a timeline of automotive computer controlled systems, starting in 1968. And then so on and so forth. It goes into 69 all the way through nowadays.
This is cool, though, because it's timeline of automotive computer-controlled systems. I'll read a couple of these. 1969, Ford introduces their first computer-controlled anti-skid system. 69.
That's pretty impressive.
Pretty forward. 71, General Motors introduced their first computer-controlled transmission. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. And 76, GM and Motorola team up to create a custom microcomputer for use in their vehicles. They're getting all the proprietary stuff. 78, Cadillac introduces a computer-controlled trip computer powered by Motorola microprocessors. A little bit into, as I was saying, like, here's what your trip...
Yeah,
like
for
trip A, trip B, kind of on the speedometer.
Yep.
Odometer, yeah. That's interesting. Okay, and then it moves over into 81. A lot of GM stuff here. GM motor vehicles now come with a Motorola 6802-based ECM with emissions control.
Yep, 80s.
Yeah.
Kind of when that became prevalent.
Yeah, that was. What, catalytic converter?
Yep.
Wasn't that right?
Yep.
There was all this talk of...
Yep.
Yeah.
It was the early 80s.
How much your vehicle is spewing bad stuff into the environment.
Yep.
83, Intel's 8061 custom design automotive microcontroller chips start being used in Ford vehicles. So they move pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Over. And what do we got there for the rest of those?
So we got 86, Carnegie Mellon University's NavLab 1 becomes first self-driving autonomous car.
Wow.
That was in 86. I was surprised by that
NavLab 1? I've never heard of that.
What is up with that? Maybe one of those computers that kind of have their, or like robots that have their hand on the steering wheel and the gas pedal.
Like a Roomba?
Yeah, like a Roomba, exactly.
They got just the little dummy guy in there. It's a remote control.
But the 86, another in 86, Chrysler introduces multiplexing wire communication modules with chips supplied from Harris Semiconductor.
Harris, aren't they around here in Florida?
Yep, Harris is still around.
They're pretty big here in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of defense work.
87, first automotive microcontroller chips produced to CAN vehicle bus standards by Intel and Philips Semiconductor. So that kind of surprised me. I didn't think CAN really took a hold until the early 2000s. I know in the late 90s, I know Mercedes, a lot of them started getting it, but I was kind of surprised.
Now that relates like to the CAN bus?
The CAN bus
As
computer.
it were. Can you explain that to me and our listeners maybe?
Yeah, so the computer CAN bus, it's like as a radio, for example, they it's pretty interesting because they sorry about that. So basically the way that it works is, from a radio perspective, in the old days they used to run off of 12 volts. There was really no brains behind it besides the unit itself. And, when for instance, a BCM, that would communicate through the CAN bus to the radio.
Yeah.
And it would send
it's like
series
a network
of
computers that are kind of shooting data back and forth to each other.
Exactly.
So
and they all kind of communicate with each other, and a lot of it feeds back to the OBD2 port, so you can read a lot of it. So it's pretty interesting.
Well, that was as early as late 80s, 87.
Crazy.
Wow.
Next one here, 91, Ford and Motorola form partnership to design and produce their P-TEC powertrain and transmission microcontrollers. Pretty cool.
A lot of development. Well, thanks for explaining that, too.
2000, so jump up 9 years. Ford Microelectronics is acquired by Intel.
Intel?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they must be doing something right.
Yeah.
They were acquired by Intel.
Yeah. 2014, first commercially available self-driving vehicle introduced. What is it?
Navia?
Navia shuttle?
Navia shuttle? Who makes that?
I don't know. I've never even heard of that.
Should we look that up?
We should look that up.
Never even heard of that.
2015, Daimler's Freightliner inspiration becomes first self-driving semi-autonomous semi-truck. Pretty cool. 17, Tesla kind of followed and introduced their first model of all-electric autonomous self-driving freight truck.
Damn.
And then Intel comes back in 2017 too, acquires Mobileye, a developer of vision-based advanced driver assistance systems.
Okay, so these little Navia things look like they're pretty much available kind of like in theme parks. They're like little automated shuttles kind of moving around.
Okay.
You remember the old days where they would have the trolley cars? Like
Yes.
San Francisco was famous for that. With you just ride on the line. You didn't really need anybody doing anything there. You just kind of hop on, move along.
Exactly.
That's the original kind of concept there. But it looks like now, and that's 4 years later from when you read that in 2014, they're moving forward in that space. But the thing you said that was scary to me was like, wait, they're doing a Tesla semi? No. So is this going to take like truck driver jobs off the road or something?
And I think really what it came down to is how far can a truck that's battery driven, how far can it go? How long is the range on those? So
300 miles.
Yeah. So I mean, if you think about having a huge load in the back and hauling it, how far can that go without having to recharge?
There's so many little nuances when you're driving those long trips, especially if you're like going through the mountains, the incline on the road.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the people in front. I just don't. I don't know. I think they're probably another decade away from that even being a reality. Hopefully, yeah. So your trucking job is safe. So for now,
now.
Anyway, for now. But I thought this was interesting, and that was a great list. And thanks for sharing the additional insight on that, Doug. But this is something I thought was fascinating. It's today the average car has about 30, and some luxury cars may have as many as 100 of these microprocessor controlled devices known as electronic control units, or ECU. Mm-hmm. These units can have up to 100 million lines of code, more than in some jet fighters.
That's crazy.
It says.
Yep.
I mean, so yeah, you don't think they're tracking you in your little Toyota Camry whatever, but they've got the capability they're gathering data left and right and move it. I mean,
It's funny. They have this software out called Vehicle Spy. So if you connect to a CAN bus line, you can actually read what's going on through. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but as you're reading it, as you're seeing it, it's millions and millions of
spitting out data.
It's insane. It really is. So, but yeah, that's how they all communicate with each other. And like you just said, about 30, and some luxury cars may have as many as 100. On your typical. Yeah. Typical Ram truck, for instance, I know there's probably around 30 in there, and they all communicate to each other, and they throw codes, and that's how you can tell what's wrong with the vehicle,
Yeah, and in some vehicles, I know, like Chrysler specifically, like in a Cherokee, if you change the radio out, you've got to have proxy alignment.
Proxy alignment.
And that's, I think, basically, in essence, so that the computers know, hey, you've got a different piece of factory gear in here now, so make it work.
Yeah. We need to communicate with it. It's unknown. We need to reconfigure it so it talks with everything. So that's a great point. Yep.
Yeah, so next thing, since 1996, most automobiles have employed an onboard computer and various sensors to detect mechanical problems. As of 2010, modern vehicles also employ computer-controlled anti-lock braking systems and computer-operated transmission control units. The driver can also get in-dash information while driving in this manner, such as real-time fuel economy and tire pressure readings. Local dealers can update most vehicles' firmware.
Yep, the manufacturers, absolutely.
So it could be like even a recall going on with your vehicle.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the times they'll plug it up to the computer.
Yep.
And kind of make some adjustments.
Yeah, a lot of times with these recalls, it's not necessarily bringing in your vehicle because they're going to start changing out a bunch of parts. A lot of times it's just a software or firmware update.
Yeah, they've got to run kind of a patch update into those computers.
Yeah, it's like, just as an example, the Jeep Cherokee, when they first came out with that new body, the KL, in 2014, they were having transmission problems, and they were getting bad reviews. FCA was getting bad reviews because they weren't shifting right. They had all sorts of problems. So people would bring it back to the dealer, and I think they tried 4 different updates in 2014, and the 4th one finally worked, and they were like a dream, right? They drove perfectly.
Oh, really?
But could you imagine how many people didn't go in to get their, transmission control unit?
Damn thing.
Yeah. I mean, think about how many of those are on the road that are still running rough because they didn't have that simple update performed to the TCU module, So it's interesting,
Well, and it's crazy to think, too, that you can just let it, because they do all of those recall things for free.
Yeah.
It just takes some time. You got to be there maybe an hour or more sometimes. Drink that stale coffee in some places.
Exactly. But that's one thing that you get by going to a franchise dealer as opposed to just your local mom and pop shop down the street. And a lot of the mom and pops have the capability of doing those updates with the proper subscriptions and whatnot. But if you go, in this instance, you go to your Jeep dealer, they're required to do that. Even if you go in for an oil change.
They send you that letter, here you go. Your vehicle has a recall. You got to come down. We'll do it right away.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and invariably, too, I guess people may have a little bit of fear, like, oh, they'll bring it there and they'll find something else that I got to pay for.
Now I got to get a whole new transmission flush.
Did you know your seatbelt is made of elastic? It doesn't work. You got to change out your seatbelts, and that's $500.
Yep.
Oh, that would be a headache. Okay, cool. So don't be afraid of the firmware update. If you're being told you need one, you need one. It's the best thing to do is to get it, and it could light up some additional features or functionality or insight into the running of your vehicle that you didn't have previously.
Yeah.
So, does your vehicle need a software update, and why? We've got an article here, and it is from driving.ca, and I think that's from Canada. And it's all about what we just kind of covered and went over. I'll start out real quick on this one here. Many of us know by now that the average auto contains multiple computers and more lines of code than the first space station. For the most part, they operate reliably with little upkeep. But just like our smartphones, tablets, and laptops and desktops, they can work better with software updates. But how do we know when the updates become available and whether or not it's worth getting it done and who pays for it? So that article goes on to give you a lot of great insight. And again, that's driving.ca.com. And I know we've been doing this our 6th episode of this podcast, and I know we do have listeners up in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
And surprisingly, like over in Spain.
Oh,
and
very cool.
Russia, yeah. So, we wanted to grab a source that was outside of the States and kind of see that they're giving you the same kind of wisdom and advice that, hey, even if you go to your dealer, they can run it in there for you and say, hey, look at this.
Yep.
This is brand new, this week. You can, get your firmware updated right here.
Yep. It was interesting with this article, too. It says they can often be little things like improving the HVAC temperature control response or making a radio station seek and search features work a little more smoothly. Or it could be more critical things like your anti-lock brakes or You go down the list. I mean, your steering. A lot of the steering nowadays are all electronically controlled. So. Always having the latest and greatest updates. I mean, it's
a great
comes
point.
to be a safety thing as well.
You're exactly right.
Know? Not just a convenience thing; it becomes a safety thing.
Well, and you do pay a butt ton of money for a car, a lot of the times, and so you should get every single penny back or worth effort. And having the insight into the general operation of the vehicle is what the manufacturer wants you to have.
Exactly. The article also talks about when do they issue a recall? It's typically when the car maker has proof that avoiding such notifications will lead to lawsuits or a substantial decrease in customer satisfaction. So how do they know if it just needs to be an update, or how do they know it needs to be in a recall? So typically when it comes to a big safety thing, they'll definitely recall it. Or like I mentioned in that case of the 2014 Jeep Cherokee, customer satisfaction. You spend $30,000 on a Jeep and it's not running right, it's not shifting right.
Exactly.
You need to get that fixed. So luckily for them, it was just several software updates. The article also talks about Tesla, which is kind of interesting too, because Tesla is one of the only automakers that they actually do over-the-air updates.
So you mean like wirelessly?
Yeah. They all have built-in LTE, and it's overnight. Your car's parked in the garage. And
really?
Yep. It'll update.
Just self-auto update.
Auto update.
That's
just like
awesome.
your phone. A lot of times with your phone, you'll put on the auto update. The Teslas do auto updates.
Well, I know a lot of the infotainment systems, specifically the infotainment.com works with, there's a number of vehicles that have those Wi-Fi antennas, and they're harvesting the signal. And so while you're sleeping, they're updating the firmware. You kind of have to accept, yes, I want to update it.
Yes. That's for the radio, more or less. The radio.
Oh, but so this is for the whole car.
This is for the whole car. So it's really cool.
Wow.
I looked into it a few weeks ago. I read a lot of blogs and whatnot about GM, Ford, Toyota, Nissan, and Chrysler, and GM. I believe it's the CTS or the ATS. One of those vehicles, starting in 2021, is going to have over-the-air updates to the BCM.
Really?
So all the modules will be updated overnight if there's something that needs to be updated. Which is really cool.
So cool. Yeah, well, it's just low maintenance then. I mean, and it's more of a luxury vehicle, so you're like, hey, I don't have to go.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
The dealer, it's doing it by itself.
Oil change over the air. It's gonna be really cool.
You can't get that. Come on, that was funny. Oh wait, do we have that? Oh, okay. Okay. Oh, you're getting the applause on that one. Okay, cut that out. All right, so cool. So a lot of great information. Again, driving.ca is a website where we found that article. What do we got up next here? We got one or two more, I think.
Yeah, the next one here is DAS European Auto House. Is that the next one that we got here?
Oh, you're right. Yeah. DAS European Auto Haus, house. It's spelled as the German would spell it, HAUS.
Das European Auto Haus.
Das Haus.
I think that's what it is.
You should update your car's software.
But why should you update your car's software?
Why?
And it's basically saying the reasons behind the vehicle software update is for improved performance every day, right? Again, this particular article is talking about Tesla again. Obviously that's going to give you best performance. You can do it from home is another reason. Yeah. About 20% of cars sold last year included connectivity features that made remote updates possible for navigation and entertainment system software.
Awesome.
Why else? Extends the life of your vehicle. Most vehicles made after the start of the 21st century has at least some type of software included in it. It minimizes security risks. That was another big one. Outdated software is one of the biggest threats to sensitive information being hacked.
See, and I was going to ask that question too. With these wireless updates and stuff, are those vehicles more prone to getting hacked? Or
Chrysler did a big thing starting in 2018. They put a security gateway module in to keep people from getting onto the bus network,
from just being able to jump in there,
and specifically with the radio, because you can. Through LTE, you can actually get in there, but there's security patches now, and it's all been resolved. But there was a little stuff there that they had to put the block on. So they put not only software updates like we're talking about, but they also put a security gateway module in to prevent that from happening again.
So a guy with a computer in a parking lot can't hack your
Exactly.
your ride. But yeah, to kind of push it back into this article though, and that's what it's saying too, is if you don't have current firmware, you could be subject to some kind of hacking with the vehicle, which is horrible.
Yep.
I mean, because if your odometer's off,
Yep.
if these little details of your vehicle, I heard. As I was doing a little research for this particular thing, there, I think, is part of this article that talks about where your car just won't start.
Yeah.
If you don't, after a while, your car just won't start.
That's crazy.
And, you'll be there scratching your head. Is it the battery? Is it this? But it's potentially the firmware that's kind of shutting things down, saying we're not in a good space to operate.
Yep.
So, and I think in the future, too, as you get, more and more, and as we're going into this episode itself, we're seeing how much computers are doing that people used to do.
Yeah.
Mankind would be like monitoring, oh, look at this, we need oil, hey, we need, we're cracking this head, and you always had a visual spot check feel. My dad was a mechanic, and he was always talking about stuff, that he was into, like, you got to look out for this, you can't, maintenance is a big thing.
So big time.
I love that the computer kind of does some of that maintenance to us, but if we're not responding to these little signals, there you go. Just be aware that
you think you're maintaining
that guy's your friend.
Exactly. You think you're maintaining the car because you're changing the oil and you're doing alignments, and certainly you feel like you're doing everything you should be doing. But nowadays, the computers in these vehicles are so complex; they also need to be updated as well. So I'm glad that this is one of the topics we're talking about. It's very important.
Yeah. And moving on, and that company, let me get real quick. They are because they had that was a great blog post, and we encourage people to go read through these blog posts. But it's Das European Auto Haus, and it's Haus spelt like that, and they're out of Spring, Texas.
Really?
Yeah. So they're right out of Texas. So we want to encourage people go check out those guys. See what they're all about. And as we kind of wrap this up here, I thought it'd be funny because there's a lot of aftermarket stuff out there that doesn't necessarily work with factory.
Yes.
And so as we go into this next article, it's from Crutchfield, and they are talking about the high importance of the firmware updates.
Yes,
because that's something they don't control, but they have to factor into their aftermarket solutions.
Oh yeah, and not just with in this particular article they're talking about stereos and vehicles and whatnot, but a lot of the stuff that Crutchfield sells, whether it's stuff around the house or what, but. Yeah, it kind of goes through what is firmware, what's the difference between firmware and software, why does firmware need to be updated? And they say most of the gear we use today is as much a computer as it is an audio or video device. As such, sometimes the manufacturer makes improvements to the programs that run the device, the firmware. These improvements are released as firmware updates. We can expect to see firmware updates for everything from our Blu-ray players and video game consoles to our car stereos.
Yeah.
So it's a great article. They kind of go into where do the updates come from? They come from manufacturers, software providers. How do you apply the update? So
even with Crutchfield too, sometimes a firmware update can jack up their radio.
Oh yeah.
Because it's rewriting the code.
Yeah, rewriting it.
So they're saying, hey, it's very important, but they've also kind of got a little bit of a caveat in there.
Yeah, the caution about applying updates.
Yeah, a little bit of a caution.
Yep.
Yeah. But with factory systems, you typically don't have to worry about that at all.
No, not at all. What's great about the factory systems is before you even run the update, it checks to make sure that it's actually the right update for the right unit before it proceeds. So
that's awesome.
So it's pretty cool.
All right, cool. Well, we're going to take this opportunity. Let's. Is there a little more in that article?
Not necessarily. It talks about how you find out about updates, stuff like that.
Okay, cool. Well, we were able to produce a little bit of a commercial. So we're actually going to take a commercial break. Hold on. Let's see if we can do this.
Are you tired of your old standard mirrors in your 2013 to 2019 Ram truck? If so, come to Infotainment, where we offer options to get power folding mirrors in your truck. We order directly from Mopar. Visit Infotainment.com, where we have the latest and greatest upgrades for your vehicle. Infotainment.com.
Infotainment.com.
Infotainment.com. Visit Infotainment.com, where we have the latest and greatest upgrades for your vehicle.
OBDGenie.com. The OBD Genie programmer has been under development since late 2014 and officially launched the second quarter of 2016. Several technicians and engineers at obdgenie.com put forth the effort to create low-cost and easy-to-use vehicle programmers. They plan to focus initially on all three big domestic vehicle manufacturers to enable options and features that were available from factory. So customers no longer need to battle with their local automobile franchise dealer to enable a feature. Order from obdgenie.com today. Save time and money. All right. There you go. obdgenie.com. Go check them out. That's really kind of specific to what we were just talking about with Doug here in studio with Joel, myself, and we're talking about firmware updates on this edition. And OBDGenie, they're a unique company. They can actually give you a programmer that goes into the OBD2 port that will push in factory programming. They're working on some cool stuff. I don't know if we can talk about it, but they are working on some cool stuff coming down the line.
Yep.
But it's a great portable little programmer.
Yes.
That they've invented, and it's patent pending out there, and it's obdgenie.com. You can go check them out. So we appreciate all of you listening and hanging out with us. Infotainment.com, that's our primary sponsor for this podcast. So go to infotainment.com for all of your factory radio upgrade needs. They also do power folding mirrors, as we just heard in those little spots as well, for Ram trucks. And most importantly, see if you can get. What's the best way, Doug? Would you give people advice? So, what's the best way to see if they need a firmware update? Is there a telltale sign in a vehicle?
I'll give you one quick example.
Yeah.
When I bought a Ram. It's a 2013 Ram 2500, and it was, I think, 18 months old when I bought it.
Okay.
And I took it to the dealer. I have a great relationship with a local Ram dealer. I brought it there. I said, hey, just do an oil change, check it all out.
Okay.
It needed 9 updates.
Oh, my God.
On 4 different modules. So you're talking about a car that, it had 8,000 miles when I bought it, and it needed a lot of updates. And believe it or not, a lot of it had to do with the diesel motor, so they had like some sort of little tune. They tweaked it. And
because it's a totally different beast from gasoline to diesel.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, all the inner working parts. I mean, that diesel fuel flows through those vehicles a little bit more sophisticated.
Yes. Yeah. But that's just one example. So those of you who are listening, if you've never brought your vehicle to the franchise dealer and you always go to the mom and pop shop and they do a great job with their alignments,
quick
and tires,
Jiffy Lube or whatever it is, they can't do a firmware update. Only the dealer.
Yep. Take your car to the dealer and just have them do it. Sometimes they don't even charge. You know? Sometimes they do. Sometimes they don't. So. I would definitely recommend it.
Could really catch something super important that you would never even think of that'll save you thousands of dollars down the line.
Yeah. I'll say it again, that in that Jeep scenario, FCA was able to contact maybe 30% tops to go back in to get their cars fixed.
Really?
So you're talking about 70% of those vehicles are still driving around having those issues. So what's going to happen? They're going to badmouth Jeep. They're going to say this car's junk. It's just a firmware update. Just, if they would just take it in,
and just do it. And it only takes about a half an hour or what have you. And
most
the dealer,
updates,
if they don't got anything else they're doing for you, they want you to get moving.
Yeah. Yeah.
They want you to get out the door.
Yep.
Yeah, keep moving. Unless you're shopping for another car.
Yeah, then they'll want you to
take your time and stroll around the lot, sir.
Here's some cookies and
yeah. All right, cool. Well, that's another great edition of Infotainment Talk Radio. We do have an email address, which you can email us. We have a group on Facebook under Infotainment's Facebook page. You can join us, but the email address is ITR@infotainment.com. So the letter I, the letter T, the letter R @infotainment.com. Send us your questions, your concerns. We are monitoring that email inbox, and we keep growing here at our podcast for vehicles, for and about. And most importantly, too, if you have a question, there's something we haven't covered or a topic, please send us that. We love to hear.
We welcome all
those kind of questions and stories. Doug, anything in closing?
That pretty much wraps it up for me. I think it's very important. I think it was a great topic.
Podcast. Yeah.
It's very
people don't think about it, but you do need to get your firmware updated as frequently, something annually, I would say, is something you should put on your...
at least annually.
Check.
Yeah. Take it to the franchise dealer once a year and just say, hey, listen, is there any open recalls? Is there any open updates that my ECUs need?
Perfect.
So,
well, good deal. Well, let's. There we go. A little Twisted Sister closing us out on this edition, and we appreciate you tuning in. We'll see you on the next Infotainment Talk Radio.
take care, guys.